Hello, I'm Leah Castiglione, and I'm going to take you through this introduction to the Patoss book, Assessing the Need for Access Arrangements in Examinations, a Practical Guide, 7th edition. I'm the author of this book, and it's published by Patoss. And as with the previous editions, it's produced in association with the JCQ. It's available for purchase from the Patoss website, and you can see a web link there at the bottom of the screen. And it's £29.50 plus £4.99 for postage and packing. There is a discount for Patoss members. So for Patoss members, the book is £25 plus £4.99 for postage and packing. It has been fully updated to reflect the current JCQ regulations. And you can see the regulations here on the screen. So we've got the JCQ AARA document here, the Access Arrangements and Reasonable Adjustments document. We can also think about the JCQ publication, the ICE booklet, the Instructions for Conducting Examinations. And the purpose of the book is that it is to be used alongside these JCQ regulations documents. And it helps to explain them in a clear and simple way, hopefully. Now, as with previous editions of the book, if there are any changes to the regulations in coming years, a separate update sheet will be produced to accompany the book to cover the changes. And this update document will be placed within the book's online resource area. I'll talk a bit more about the online resource area in just a moment. And you'll also be able to find that document on the JCQ website. As well as helping to explain the regulations, it provides additional information and examples to help to illustrate and clarify information within the JCQ publications. For example, there is a set of case studies, a chapter on case studies, and there are completed examples of each of the JCQ forms and guidance sheets to complete those forms within the online resources area. It also covers information not found within the JCQ documents. For example, details of tests that can be used to assess for access arrangements evidence, and resources to gather centre-based information, as well as information on text-to-speech and speech-to-text packages. You may have in your possession the 6th edition book, the one with the blue cover, or even the 5th edition, the one with the yellow cover. Now we're on the 7th edition with the green cover, of course, and there are some changes to the previous edition that I just want to highlight for you. There are now a greater number of online resources to accompany the book. We'll have a look at what those are a little later. There is updated and additional content. So within the chapters, some of the chapters, I've included some little quizzes, some check your knowledge questions, which I'll just describe some of those in just a moment for you. And that's hopefully to just make sure that you've got a good understanding of the content of those chapters. And there are actually 6 new chapters. So 50, nearly 60 pages in addition to the previous edition of the book. So it's a thicker book, actually. There's a new chapter all about the JCQ forms, a chapter on completing Form 8, Part 1, a new chapter on the Form 9 completion and the specialist evidence needed to accompany Form 9, so that non-assessment route for access arrangements evidence. There's a chapter on invigilators and adults in supporting roles, so readers, scribes, practical assistants, and so on, and the rules around those. There is a new chapter on considerations in further education. And then there's the case studies chapter that I referred to a moment ago. So the format of the 7th edition, the book itself is arranged into 5 parts. Foundations for Access Arrangements is Part 1. The Centre-Based Evidence is Part 2. Part 3 is all about this access arrangements assessment. Part 4, the Form 9 and specialist evidence, so the non-assessment route for evidence. And then Part 5 has lots of other chapters on all sorts of further considerations. So 26 chapters in all, as well as 3 appendices. And then the online resource area containing more than 40 resources. What I've done here is I've just thought about who might be using the book and which chapters might be particularly useful for those users. So, for example, for the person who's coordinating the access arrangements role, the SENCO, the access arrangements coordinator, well, the whole book is going to be useful for those people. But, for example, in Part 3, it's particularly going to be Chapter 8, the completion of Form 8 Part 1, and Chapter 14, the completion of Form 8 Part 3, because the rest of that chapter is about the assessment. You've got lots of different information there. For the assessor or the student assessor, then obviously it's going to be things around the assessment. So the psychometrics and standardized assessment, the test choices, and so on. So particularly useful chapters there. For the exams officer, then Chapter 4, the access arrangements available. Chapter 17, using access arrangements online, because the exams officer might be the person who's actually making that online application. Information about the JCQ inspection in Chapter 19, and then, of course, Chapter 21, the invigilators and adults in supporting roles. Now, for FE college staff, there are some particularly useful chapters that are really going to be more relevant. So the considerations in further education, Chapter 23. In Chapter 24, the case studies, then Case Study 2, looking at what happens when a candidate changes centre and needs to do the November resit. So there's a couple of different discussions there within that case study. And then Chapter 25, other qualifications that might be used within an FE college. For an EAL coordinator, the Chapter 22, access arrangements for EAL students. There is also Chapter 24, the case study 3, that looks at the use of a bilingual dictionary, and a couple of different students are discussed there. And then within the online resources, the guidance sheet to complete form BD 25%, because it may be the EAL coordinator who's completing that form. In producing this updated edition, we conducted a survey to gather feedback on the previous edition of the book, and we're fortunate enough to receive several hundred responses, and you can see some of the comments here. It was really heartening to receive this positive feedback. And in producing this 7th edition, I've tried to take account of as much of that feedback as possible to include some of the comments and suggestions that were made, and hopefully improve the book further and produce useful content. So thank you for listening to this information on the 7th edition of this book. If it's inspired you to purchase the book and its online resources, you can do this through the Patoss website, and you can see the link there on the screen. Thank you.